Rolling. Welcome to the American Indian and Alaska Native Behavioral Health webinar series. My name is Jenny Richards, and today we're welcoming Sean Bear to join us on the topic of recovery-oriented systems of care. This training is brought to you by the National American Indian and Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. We are one of 4 national focus centers serving the ATTC network, which also includes 10 regional centers and a network coordinating office. To learn more about the ATTC network, please visit our website. Coming up in June, we'll have our sessions today on recovery-oriented systems of care. We also have this essential substance abuse webinar coming up as well. Our center is NADAC certified educational provider and would be happy to provide you with CEs for a $15 fee. The request form is available for download in the Files pod in the webinar screen and will also be sent in the follow-up email to all who attended. Immediately following today's webinar, you'll be redirected to our GIPRA evaluation. This survey asks about your satisfaction with the event and will take less than 10 minutes to complete. We want to thank you in advance for helping us to improve our programming through completing this evaluation. You'll be muted for the duration of the webinar, so please use the Q&A pod to share your questions and comments, and we will address questions at appropriate times during the presentation. If you'd prefer, you may view the presentation in full screen mode by clicking on the full screen button at the top right corner of the presentation pod, which looks like 4 arrows pointing outward. To return to the regular view, click that button again. We would also like you to be aware that this webinar records participant attention time. If you minimize the webinar or are working in another window, the system will record your participation as inactive, which may be reflected in the number of CEs received. The opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the official position of CSAT, SAMHSA, or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We want to welcome Sean Bear today. He has earned his BA from Buena Vista University in 2002, majoring in psychology and human services. He's also studied mental health counseling at Drake University for 2 years. He's a member of the Meskwaki tribe in Tama, Iowa, and has worked with Native Americans with substance use issues for many, many years. He's an Army veteran of 9 years, honorarily discharged from the 82nd Airborne. His passion is to assist people in overcoming their substance use issues as well as other issues and to return to the spiritual ways of their ancestors. It is his hope that one day people of all nations will coexist and live in peace and harmony, not just with each other, but within themselves, as well as come to the realization that our ancestors of long ago already knew that we are all brothers and sisters under one Creator. Again, please type your questions or comments for the presenter in the QA pod at this time.
Hello all. Again, this is Sean Bear. We'll get started here. Okay, we're funded by we are the National American Indian and Alaska Native ATTC. We're funded by SAMHSA. So some of the content of this publication does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA or HHS. Overview of the presentation. We'll talk a little bit about the program first, and then a little bit about a project or a program design, gaining community buy-in, assessing needs of a community, alternative methods of engagement, the ROSC, and best practice. So part of the learning objective is by the end of the workshop, you should be able to list at least two challenges that can impede the process of ROSC within Native American communities. List two effective approaches to complete community-based participatory research for needs assessment, intervention, evaluation for the use of ROSC with Native communities. List two methods of integrating or utilizing ROSC with Native communities. So you'll see here the AT network. We have 10 research areas. You'll see the different uh, regions in different colors here. You'll see that the YSM and LGBT is in the Pacific Southwest. You have New England ATCC, the Southeast ATTC. There's also going to be some international ones pretty soon. Those are getting started in, I think, some in Vietnam and Ukraine and different areas of the of the world. Also, we have 4 national focus areas. Again, we are from the National American Indian Alaskan ATTC. That's a National Frontier and Rural ATTC out of Reno, Nevada. And National Hispanic and Latino ATTC out of Bayamon, Puerto Rico. And then also National Screening Brief Intervention Referral to Treatment ATCC out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So our mission with the National American Indian and Alaska Native ATTC is to serve as national subject expert in key resource on adoption of culturally legitimate and relevant addiction treatment recovery services to with American Indians, Alaska Native clients, and substance abuse and other behavioral health disorders, and the American Indian Alaska Native behavioral health workforce. So many times we work with either the natives themselves, different communities. We also work with those who are providing services to Native Americans or Alaskan Natives. Our target population really was a behavioral health workforce providing treatment for American Indian Alaska Native clients, and those are recovery support specialists, trainers, educators, clinical supervisors, future leaders in behavioral health organizations. So we look at recovery-oriented systems of care with Native communities. We're going to look at like a little bit about program philosophy. One thing about that is to try to build a holistic recovery model of care, influenced by current science, of course, surrounding addiction and treatment. You'll see later on where we're going to be adding more about best practices and more cultural knowledge within the treatment services. Looking at the whole person. It helps to reduce stigma for those with substance abuse and mental health issues. It allows for a broader understanding of behavioral health and belief systems. I think we had done a roundtable in Minnesota about a year and a half ago, and we were talking about with a lot of doctors, PhD, psychiatrists, those people from IHS and all over talking about mental health in assessment and diagnosis. So that was very interesting. It has helped us to understand things a little bit better and how to alleviate American Indians, Alaskan Natives from being misdiagnosed, promote and facilitate health and overall wellness. Looking at medically monitored treatments, evidence-based clinical approaches, and in respect to community beliefs and practices through recognizing and responding to social determinants of health and well-being. So really what we really want to do is to look at the whole person and not just what either just behavioral health or what they would be doing just So then we're going to look at the culture, look at their spiritual beliefs and practices. Looking at a program and then an overview is design a safe environment that assists clients in reducing physical, cognitive, social, environmental barriers to improve overall health. So you might look at the way they're thinking, exercise, how are they working with the community or others socially, looking at their environment, their home life, what are they doing with their home life or going out, depending on maybe where they work or something like that. Maybe the environment can be a little not so good for them sometimes. Collaborate with programs, providers, and local traditional, spiritual, and medicine peoples to fill specialized services needs within the continuum of care. That promote a positive change, integrate services delivery, facilitate client referrals to needed service. For instance, they might find people within the community who you can refer to for those people needing either traditional services such as healing or education or different teachings and stuff like that. Also, those who might be providing sweat lodge ceremonies or different other ceremonies or healing, fasting and such. Program partner with local organizations or programs to provide long-term programs for men, women with children, and youth. Um, so looking at the program that's needed and what's needed in the population. So then you might have to, if you have a lot more women, maybe for instance, you have a part of it that's mostly just for women, or if you have a lot of youth, you might make sure that you have a lot of youth workers with their programs. So then looking at a holistic healthcare environment to reflect the value placed on the client care. And that's very important because if you're just looking at maybe the workers' care or other cares beyond the client, then you're not going to be focused on the client. Work with local artists, potters, craftsmen, quilters, traditional tire making, powwow outfit making peoples. Looking at, so this will also take a little more work in looking at what each tribal members in the tribe used to do, or they might some still be doing. Maybe they have those who are potters in one area. Maybe they're artists. Maybe there are people quilting or making some kind of a traditional attire for ceremonies or something like that. So it's going to depend upon whether maybe most of the people or whatnot may be either more traditional. So those, you could even run into tribal communities where maybe all they have left is something more or less like the powwow. Recognize research that indicates a healing environment, as it can reduce client stress, reduce the need for medications, provide for improved psychological well-being of clients and staff. One thing about to look at that with a holistic environment and looking at providers is to make sure that you balance your providers with clients. So then you don't have all those with maybe PTSD going to one treatment provider or to one worker, because over time they might develop secondary trauma. So you kind of balance that out. And if some of your workers are being more stressed with that, and sometimes maybe they need a time to take a little break or go for a walk or something to help them. So then assessing your client's needs and developing a program goals and objectives involves a collection of various data input from both the clients and the staff. I was part of developing a program once before, so then, and this is really common, I guess, to what we did as well, because we looked at what the client's needs were, asking them what they would like to know, what they feel that they need education in to help them with their life, not just with treatment, not just with substance abuse, but also to help them with emotions, help them with maybe changing some of the thoughts that have kind of led them to the use, help them understand family systems, help them to understand a lot of different things about themselves and around them, that so they could feel better. We also incorporated exercise programs. We had quilting. We had there was programs or different parts of it where we even separated men and women, so women did different kind of exercise than the men did, and that was mostly due to some of the males not wanting to do the things that the women were doing. So we had them lifting weights. And of course, it was more on a machine, so there was no real danger of that. Unless, of course, they were trying to do it dangerously or something like that. So that was always looked at, and there was always a staff member there to help that. Use of clinical staff meetings and staff suggestion box. Looking at questionnaires for clients before, during, and after to see how, looking at their satisfaction, if they felt it helped, what helped the most or what helped the least. Part of that too was if you look at a holistic care, so then you're looking at your physical body, your physical self, emotional self, intellectual self, and spirit. So then sometimes you might have things where people had a time to pray or have somebody come into the program. You know, there are programs out there where they got healers and things coming in as well. They could use sage or such. Also with emotions, helping them to learn how to resolve certain things such as anger management, how to work on fears, how to even how to cook. That can be very, I mean, over time, many different studies are saying that eating is very important. So it does affect how you feel at times and how it may affect you, I guess, with even physical activity. So then looking at tribal, cultural, and spiritual assessment. So looking at the songs, the dances, the dress of the community, whether it be in the powwow or more traditional attire. Looking at how they see themselves ethnically, how they feel about themselves. Do they have a good self-esteem about who they are? Special knowledge and skills, you know, stories, legends, maybe some of even the artwork or quill work or beading. You know, if you look at a lot of beading throughout the United States, even into Canada, you'll see different native beading and quilt work and stuff like that, that you can see that it comes from certain areas. So program development might include daily client orientation groups, nurse-led health education groups, facilitation of stages of change, motivational enhancement, psychoeducational and interactive groups, activity groups. You know, I think some of those could be like having somebody who's very good at quilt making to come in and teach people how to quilt, how to teach them how to bead or sew certain things, or even making moccasins. Community-led self-help groups, peer recovery through volunteer peer advocates, sweat lodges, talking circles, walk, exercise. So looking at how you design a program, provide clients with skills development, information, structure, and the opportunity to engage in the change process. Program content, intensity, and design based on length of stay. So looking at that, it's somebody who's going to be in a facility for a while. You can take a little bit slower, and you realize it's like, especially with substance abuse or something like that, clients who are just now coming into a treatment facility, they should really be expected to do this arduous work right away, because it's going to take some time for some of the chemicals, alcohol or drugs, to leave the system, and that'll help them feel better about themselves. So then after a while, with chemical changes within the brain, chemistry within the body will kind of balance out a little bit, so leave some of the more strenuous work later on in treatment. Utilize current science in behavioral and public health fields, but also traditional, spiritual, and medicine practices and beliefs to serve as a guide to program design with the vision of providing holistic health care. So when we did the spiritual roundtable a year and a half ago, what was asked by medicine peoples and stuff there was, even with assessment processes, when they're going to possibly diagnose somebody with a mental health disorder, to refer some of that work also with medicine peoples, so that they could listen to what's going on and see whether what is happening is actually a cultural thing. So looking at relationship issues and context, so then you want to look at the age. So also with age, you might not place an older client with a very young counselor. Looking at ethnicity, looking at the recovery status, looking at their belief systems. So then if looking at whether somebody is traditional, bicultural, assimilated, not to just expect all natives to be, from a traditional background. Maybe some are Christian or Catholic, or maybe they kind of practice both. Looking at their sexual orientation, or their disability or gender. This can sometimes run into some problems, maybe for counselors who don't want to work with somebody who's transgender. So then looking at some of other belief systems, such as maybe the native LGBT or two-spirit programs that might assist natives. Looking at the race and education. So then a lot of these, it's like you're looking not just at the clients, but also at your counselors as well. So if somebody has a problem maybe with working with traditional peoples because they are not really open to those things, like a counselor, maybe they're Catholic or Christian or such, and so then making sure that when you have somebody who's very traditional, maybe they not work with them. Okay, looking at evaluation. So looking at your programs and services, making sure that they're monitored and evaluated to determine their effectiveness in reducing occurrence and amount of substance use among those served. So what you're really looking at is outcome. And you'll see the new SAMHSA guidelines is that's what they're really going to be looking at for now on, is outcome of your clients. How are they doing after they leave? 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later. So you want to look at get an ongoing collection of input from clients and staff, whether you need to develop either other programs or refine or change specific programs so they meet the goals and objectives of the program. Looking at outcome data. There's one here um, from the Drug and Alcohol Abuse Normative Evaluation System. So they have a system that's designed to provide policymakers, service providers, access to current chemical treatment activities. So looking at a combination of process and outcome evaluation methods can be used to measure program effectiveness. Coordinate client care with chemical dependency assessment teams, case managers, mental health teams, urgent care and crisis stabilization, all located in one location if possible. Pursue options to better integrate behavioral health services with primary health care that are respectful and utilize native practices, values, and beliefs. So I think that second one, to pursue options to better integrate behavioral health services and primary health with respect to native practices, values, beliefs, is very important, especially when it comes to what you're doing with the program. Also looking at belief systems of your clients compared to the belief systems of the staff or program. So then if the client or the people you're working with are very traditional, they have these spiritual backgrounds that are a little bit different than maybe what the staff is used to, that's a very good time to bring in healers, medicine people, more spiritual people who can help with that. Looking at current science in behavioral health indicates that an ecological model of care is a promising practice and a driving force behind the Affordable Care Act. Pursue health home models that intends to diversify or influence on client health. Detoxification services should not operate in a vacuum, that are separate from health care in order to assist in reducing stigma. So then, looking more of like a health home, if you were to go into a facility that is more feels homey, that can also help reduce the stress of your clients. Also, with more of a long-term program that allows for a continuation of care, longer times. It helps also with times for chemistry within the brain and body to balance back out a little more closer to normal. So looking at health homes, an ecological model of care can be operationalized within the framework of a health home. So then health homes attend to a whole person care with a proper dosage of service delivery with a longitudinal approach. Health homes strive to meet the physical, psychological, environmental, and social and spiritual needs of the clients. Detoxification services should be fully integrated with other medical and social services. So then, when you're looking at a lot of these programs, sometimes we're not just going to have either counselors or something like that. We might need to bring in peer recovery coaching and support peoples. So then, and this is something that many programs are utilizing nowadays for peer recovery. Many looking at the chronic disease model. So many agree with current science that has established addiction as a chronic disease of the brain. As with other chronic diseases, addiction has a physical genesis that often leads to a maladaptive pattern of behavior and physical, emotional, and psychological consequences. The disease creates the behavior, not the other way around. So then, when you're able to do this and use peer recovery and support people's, those a lot of times these will have ways to help guide them a little further and let them understand what's going on and what helped them. This will give the client a little more, um, I guess, a better outlook of the future at times. Sometimes it's hard to look ahead in life, but it's much easier to look behind you. So, and that's something that really helps with peer recovery and support, is because they have that information for them and that'll assist them in moving on. Sometimes when we're look at our problems that we have in life, you can see it almost like as a big mountain or big hill, and sometimes we need a little help sometimes. So it's like if you look at that, peer recovery and support people could also be those who can lend a hand, reach down, and help them up sometimes. So again, with the chronic disease, treatment of addiction requires behavior change, similar to the treatment of other diseases. Current theories surrounding behavioral change assist in recognizing obstacles to achieving and maintaining better health. So part of the summary of that part is to be diligent and evolving to better meet the client's needs through evaluation, program development, use of evidence-based practices, improved service integration, and the use of best practices such as experience-based practices that have been utilized with local natives and tribes. A lot of the programming that has been successful to communities were not those who came in and said, okay, now do it this way. Those that have been the most successful in native communities that have worked, have gone into the community, see what they're doing, and then add some of this other program into that. So looking at prevention,
Sure. Hi, this is Lena. So as far as prevention, you just want to be strengthening relapse prevention skills, rebuilding positive support networks. That means breaking old habits and remaking new habits, which can be challenging, but is very important as far as the prevention aspect. Sustain one's connection to traditional practices. Make this a daily practice. Make sure that traditional practices are done every single day, and if there's time made for that, and not just done once in a while or on special occasions. Rebuild trust with loved ones, reaching out to one's peers, one's family, if that's the support group they choose, and finding other loved ones. Seek employment, education, or trade. Stay busy, don't stagnate, and attend to one's overall health care and needs. Some youth prevention and intervention strategies for reservation settings include youth prevention activities. Those could be maybe some of the, well, I suppose we have summer programs here, but sometimes there are summer programs or fun activities you can do with youth. Juvenile detention centers, school and after-school programs, summer programs. There are also an increasing number of cultural programs. Learning the language, wasipi dancing, learning songs for various occasions, equine therapy, which is an up-and-coming, I think, almost evidence-based practice, canoe programs, those are kind of popular up in the Northwest, ropes programs, also increasing the number of ceremonies by being attended, increasing the number of spiritual ceremonies being attended by various age groups. So that would include thinking about different ways to reach out to community elders, those who are working, and making time for them, and youth as well as any other populations.
Okay, next here we'll be getting to a little bit better, more information about recovery-oriented systems of care. And I really like this. It takes a village. If you look at the recovery-oriented systems of care, many times it goes very well with Native American systems and the way they do things. So then looking at a detox unit or going through detox. So looking at that, that's an acute care. Making sure people realize that addiction is not an acute illness, but oftentimes a chronic illness. Acute treatment plus aftercare equals improvement. Acute treatment with no aftercare usually has a poor outcome. Continuum care is improvement. No continuum care has poor outcomes. So think beyond the treatment. It takes a village. Recovery takes place in the community, within community involvement. So many times, if you're able to get the community to buy in and help, looking at people who may want to take people for walks or to get them involved in more cultural practices or traditional practices, whatever it might be, whether you're going to sun dances or sweat lodges or whatever it might be. Looking at that, there might be some who can teach people more about herbs or how to pick things, like different medicines or such. I know up north they used to have this medicine man. There was many people in the community would help him, and they would all go out at certain times of the year and pick many medicines, and there was a lot of people there. It's pretty neat to watch. Um, Toward integrated care, looking at the mental health, physical health, emotional and spiritual health of the person and community. The longer people stay in treatment, the more likely it is that the person will recover. So then other factors you might need to look at is natural recovery, lack of dose effect. More expensive treatments were not generally more effective. Evidence-based approaches, experience-based approaches, culturally informed approaches. So we need to look at a lot of these and to integrate things together that'll help out. Looking at expert models, well, they have a treatment delivery are delivered to a correct deficiency. Sometimes overlooking the protective factors. So then it's important not to overlook strengths within a person, within a family, or within the community. But remembering that treatment works. Treatment agencies are considered one of the many resources for the client. No one resource is more important than the other. Various systems need to work together very closely with the client. So then looking at the Ross system, you'll see that an individual or family our community and what you're looking at. So then it encompasses all around. So then you might have a person, but remembering that he also has a family. He's also part of the community. So everything that affects one is going to affect the other. It's also going to affect their recovery efforts. It's also going to affect their wellness and their health. And so then looking at services and supports that might be offered to the individual, family, or community. Maybe sometimes they might need child care to help them to go to treatments or to make meetings or something like that. Help to further in their education. Looking at whether they have PTSD or might need some mental health help. Maybe they need some people find legal or financial education. Looking at whether they need spiritual help. So then it goes even further. So then looking at from a person in alcohol or drug, of course, they're going to need addiction services. They may need mental health services. They might need some primary care systems to help them. Looking at, they might need to the family or child. Maybe they might need some child welfare or family services that'll help them, or social services to help them possibly get more food or monies to help them live on a little bit better. If they need financial or legal help, maybe sometimes signing up for health insurance, or whether they're a veteran, maybe they can get help from the Department of Defense or Veterans Affairs. So then, looking at the recovery-oriented systems of care, it does go in very well with the Native communities. It's a continuum of care, recovery schools, community engagement. You're looking at evidence-based practices. It's cost-effective. You're able to retain clients. Builds better social connectedness. Builds a safer and drug-free housing. Reduce crime. So then, when you're looking at integrated behavioral health healing and recovery models with Native populations, so then build relationships with local communities. Incorporate attention to spirituality into the counseling. And that's one thing that we had seen looking at the roundtable we did, is there was a lot of people saying that the spiritual knowledge and use was needed in counseling. Reduce administrative obstacles to receiving care. Inform clients of confidentiality rights. Coordinate a community resource with prioritized clients' needs in a manner consistent with the client's diagnosis. So then here, I think we use this from another slide, is you have the red road, and not everybody always is taught about the red road, but it's a cultural, spiritual road. So then it kind of guides us in life and helps the person to be able to live a good way. So also we have the Western or Eastern or other approaches such as acupuncture, alternative healing, art therapy, behavioral health. But when you're looking at the client, you need to remember to utilize both these things. And this is also going to it's going to depend upon your client as well, whether if they're traditional, bicultural, or assimilated. So looking at cultural informed best practices, the Red Road approach, many of you have probably heard of it. We call it an innate cultural spiritual resource of an indigenous native American person, people are focused on this treatment approach. Culture and spiritual information are a normal part of the treatment regimen when and where appropriate spiritual ceremonies are included in treatment and aftercare plans. Um, it's kind of neat about the Red Road because if you look at teachings around it, it's a spiritual road that we all travel. So in a way, it can be individualized through life in order to learn what we have come to learn. So it's like they say before we're born, we have a reason why we come here. Things that we're going to learn in life and things that we have to undergo. So, of course, if you need to learn forgiveness, you're going to have people who are going to treat you bad.
Sean, we have a question from somebody, and their question from Rebecca is, how do you respect confidentiality while connecting with the community?
Um, Respecting confidentiality with around the community can be difficult sometimes. That's definitely something to worry about. Um, hmm. I know there was something we heard once before where there was a person taking clients to her home for sweat lodges, and what we had suggested them was to have the sweat lodge somewhere else and have it open not to just the community or not just the clients, but also the community. So it wouldn't matter who was there, and anybody could have been there. So you're not just saying, oh, they're having it just for clients or something like that. It's something to be aware of when you're going to be walking around with clients, of course. So maybe you have certain times where they can go out on their own. I mean, if you take them for something within the community, so then maybe they can meet somewhere else at a certain time, or make it a little more um, private for them. You know, have times where not everybody's going to be there, or trying to sit back, and so that you give those clients time to move forward in what's going on within the community, so it doesn't look like it's an actual function from your program. Does that answer your question? I can't hear it. Okay. So then, looking at the teaching also about the Red Road is the brain and heart connection. So then, they say that the longest and hardest road anyone will ever take is the path between one's heart to the ears, between the ears. So then, and part of that is also a male-female teachings where females will teach men how to use their heart more. So then the whole role about that is for male and females to become androgynous. So then also there's a female side of us to us all and also a male side. So let me see, we'll move on. So then evidence informed culture based interventions in American Indian Alaska Native communities. Lessons on evidence-based practices in tribal communities, utilizing tribal leadership and community input to the adaptation of intervention, cultural sensitivity and competency of staff. One thing that's I think we should all look at too is not just cultural sensitivity or cultural competence, but also looking a little further on at looking at cultural humility of staff. So then building programs on cultural strengths and customs of the community. So when we're building something within a tribe, a lot of times we're going to need the backing of the tribal leadership and the community so that they understand a little bit more about what we're doing. Sometimes educating the community and the workforce within that community helps others to understand so there won't be so much stigma or maybe there's biases about that or some kind of misconceptions. So we're able to educate them and help them understand that. But sometimes we need the leadership and community buy-in to do this. And it helps them understand a little more about the process of possibly what clients might be going through. So then approach respects and accommodates. It's culture-based knowledge. Looking at the skills, the ceremonies, the values, value stories, ways of knowing. So in this again, we're looking at culture-informed best practices. Facilitates the derivation of new, improved culture-based interventions. Is there any questions about anything we've covered? Or something maybe not covered?
Yeah, one person just made a comment. Oh, wait, I'll put it.
Okay.
One person did have the comment, Elizabeth, that the development of MOUs or qualified service organization agreements can be used as well to help with confidentiality, having HIPAA and confidentiality outlined specifically. Do you have any comments on that, Sean?
One thing I would remember too about HIPAA, especially when it comes to substance abuse, is HIPAA usually only covers like record keeping or payment options for like with substance abuse. With substance abuse, you need to also remember the 42 CFR. It's under Part 2.
All right.
Does that answer the question? Or?
I thought that answered the question. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and take it from here. Okay, thank you so much, Sean, and thank you so much, everybody, for being online. Really quickly, I'm gonna finish up with our slides. Okay, so within the next 24 hours, you will receive an email from the National American Indian and Alaska Native ATTC, which will include a link to the recording of this webinar, a link to the survey in case you are unable to access it, handouts of the presentation, and a CEH request form. We appreciate your participation in our survey. It should take no more than 10 minutes to complete and let SAMHSA know how many people attended our webinar, how satisfied you are with our webinar, and how useful our webinars are to you. Coming up in June, we will have a session on coming up in July, we'll have a session on historical overview of the Native LGBT and Two-Spirit identity by Matt Ignacio. And it looks like in June, we'll also have professional readiness, attitudes, and values, which is part of our Essential Substance Abuse Skills webinar series. Again, thank you so much for taking time to participate in our webinar, and thank you again to Sean for presenting on recovery-oriented systems of care. Oh, I'm sorry, I just caught one more question. Since we have a little bit of time, I'll go ahead and read it. There are two questions. I'm sorry, there are three questions. I see 42 CFR forms, consent to treat and for release or participation in programming services. Any answer to that question? This is the question that she asked.
The 42 CFR, if you look at Part 2, that's what it really has to do with substance abuse. But it also has information about subpoenas, court orders, definitely for confidentiality. It's not a great big piece of the book, but it is very important to substance abuse. They have some of the highest laws or rules to go by. But remember, when looking at, especially with substance abuse, The way that confidentiality and stuff works, you need to look at also your state, your federal, possibly the community area of all around these laws, and remember to follow the highest ones. If you follow the highest ones in all of them, usually you'll be safe.
Okay, there's this one too.
Positive prevention strategies. Um, I think if you're working with Native Americans, I think it's very important to get a buy-in from the community for more spiritual knowledge, traditional knowledge, cultural knowledge, um, like not just something that they can just do during treatment, but something that they can follow on after that. I mean, it's very important because in a way you want them to adopt a new way of living, a new way of life, instead of looking at the past. Looking at how you get the leadership to buy in. It'd be really good if you can gather the information. That's why it's important to look at what your clients need, what the community wants, what your program can do. Have some stats or different facts that you can take to the leadership and to present that information to them. A lot of times then if you're letting them know what's going on, what you'd like to do, sometimes they will buy into it, sometimes a little more easier. I'm not, let me see. There are more information. I would check IHS for stats on relapse in Indian country. I know that before there were stats long ago, and what they said then was that usually with Native Americans had normally used twice as much treatment compared to non-natives. There's also the National Survey on Drug Use and Health.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Yep, I think we got, yep. Okay, well, you're welcome to send either Sean or me an email after this presentation if you still have any other questions, but I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And again, thank you everyone so much for being on the webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at next month's webinar. Bye.